Welcome back to the greatest podcast about film and TV, Cinema d'Amore. I'm one of your hosts, Justin Morgan, and I'm here with
Chuck.
We are discussing the very serious theme of war one last time this month. We'll probably talk about war again.
Eventually.
There's lots of war movies that we did not cover.
Always more war.
War doesn't end till you're dead.
Yeah.
We learned that from Plato.
Or
Ridley
pretty
Scott.
much learned that from all of these films, yeah.
Yeah, and all of these films consist of The Thin Red Line, Black Hawk Down, and now All Quiet on the Western Front.
You couldn't get a color in there?
I know. Or Hans Zimmer. I fucked up. No color, no Hans Zimmer.
You really threw off this last one. It feels like it doesn't fit the theme at all.
No English, no Americans.
It's just completely different.
Yeah.
It's not an ensemble. It's one fucking guy.
It's a Netflix movie.
Just everything had to be completely different.
There's like two guys.
Yeah.
But there is one very main protagonist that this movie follows. And yeah, it does. Follows the theme. War's not so great. War kind of sucks. It does it in a beautiful way. It looks great. The German is great, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, I love the score. There's a lot of practicality to it, practical sets. It takes place during World War I, during the trench warfare. What did they do? They literally built trenches. There are sets, but the sets are for those duality scenes when they're like showing the higher ups that aren't actually like fighting in the war. So like the train, it's a stage.
There's trains. We're slowly turning into a train podcast already.
No one even knows what you're talking about.
We already got trains here, but
You sound like you lost your goddamn mind.
I have.
I'm sorry. But this is going to not help your mind at all to be on this podcast. It's going to make things a lot worse. If you like war movies, the sets on those are pretty incredible. They are almost all real, except for, when people were on trains or just casually chilling in a building. But they actually dug the trenches. The trenches are a little bit wider. There's a little bit of an illusion because they had to fit the camera people somewhere. So the real experience was a lot more confined, probably a lot more people, a lot more feces, and a lot more sickness. I think that this is interesting. It feels different than the last two movies, but I would say that it's probably closer to Malick at times. We open in the middle of a battle. Our protagonist does not last very long. He gets killed. We're going to follow this guy's jacket, how everything's recycled. It still follows the guy for some time as a body, then starts following his clothes. And then we get a new protagonist not too long into the movie. They're a bunch of young boys. Him and his friends are excited to join the war because they are oblivious to what they're about to experience. They're all gung-ho about it, and our protagonist forges his parents' signature, goes to training, he gets his jacket, he inherits it from the first guy.
That jacket just didn't fit that guy.
Yeah.
That's the problem. That's what we're told. That jacket just didn't fit that guy anymore.
It does have foreshadowing in the sense of the bullet hole in the costume that the people have to fix, and weird they like forgot to take the name out of the jacket. Maybe they would just leave him, but I feel like it's an accident because this guy literally thought that his clothes belonged to somebody else whenever he got
It's not
them.
an accident because you see all the tags all over the floor.
Oh yeah, you're right. It's not the only tag on the floor.
Yeah, some people probably just don't even question. They don't even read the tag. But some people do, and then they always, I guess they'll just give them they just didn't fit that guy anymore.
They were rushing him out the battle. They didn't have time to remove those tags, so they removed them whenever people questioned it. Yeah. I was kind of turned off by watching it at first because when it came out, it looked so much
weird
like...
if you were turned on.
Yeah. I mean, there are movies that you see the trailer, you're turned on, but I was turned off. I feel like I'm in therapy your questions. It looked a hell of a lot like 1917. When you actually watch the movie, it felt closer to me to Paths of Glory for being in that same time. What if Stanley Kubrick had the ability to maneuver around the health a lot better? I think he would be jealous of it.
That's the comparison. It's like Hitchcock would be jealous of 1917 for better pulling off the feat of a single take film. 1917's the Hitchcock version.
Well, we didn't do 1917, but when you discussed real-time movies with no cuts, and you're like, there's one cut in that movie, so we can't do that one.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's would be Hitchcock's excuse. Be like, they had a major time cut. I don't accept that.
I think it's what Tarantino said the same thing. I think that was his not problem, but I think I've heard him talk on like a few different podcasts when people would bring up something like 1917 as, oh, it's this amazing feat. He's like the technicality. It technically has like a big time jump in the middle where it goes from day to night when the character's unconscious. So it's not truly like he's that same way where he's like, there is something. You can't call it a true 100% real time story. So I think he said the same thing. But
yeah, they're rubbing off on you, Chuck. That's accurate, but at the same time, we don't really have any true single take films that aren't terrible. What was that one that we watched with all the matched camera perspectives? Time Code?
Timestamp. Time Code or Timestamp.
It's like experimental, but like to have to.
It's like an interesting experiment, but not a 100% success.
Right, and then you run into Birdman, where you're like, "Holy hell! Wait, have there been no cuts?" And it's like, "Yeah, we're just at the time where we can hide our cuts very well."
Yeah, they're so good at hiding them. Which, obviously, even 1917 has more cuts than most people probably even realize, but they're just so good at hiding them that you don't.
They didn't zoom into the back of somebody.
Yeah, we're not in that point anymore where it's just zoom in on the back of that guy's jacket for a split second, and that's where we'll hide the cut.
Yeah, hide it. We don't see the cut. Like, we don't see where the jacket changed.
You don't see the subtle shift of they didn't match the lighting up 100%, and his position's not exactly in the same
his
spot.
Hair's different. No.
Yeah.
I just wanted to bring that up because I feel like you would see this movie advertised and be like, I feel like I just saw this movie a couple years ago. But I think it benefits from having several cuts. It has a lot of long shots. There's a lot of long takes. It's able to have better cinematography, but they have more fun. They're able to play around with it more. I think like that opening shot, the first probably less than 10 minutes, is just a single shot of, hey, here's our main character that's not our main character. He picks up like, a minute into the camera, just like following random people around. And then they're like, you got to go, man. You got to get up there. It just follows him till his death. I don't think there's cuts then.
Not for that first opening, like 5 or 6 minutes of him in battle.
A lot of long scenes and everything in there, too. Quickly, it's very, very quickly that they're not going to be enjoying this very much. His one friend dies almost immediately at the beginning of the movie. I think by the end of the movie, everyone else is dead. I'm pretty sure that's how it goes. But yeah, this is very much the horrors of war. The juxtaposed is, and this is what makes me think more of Paths of Glory than anything else, is that we get the other side where we get the people that are like, we see the guy on the train that's like eating like the most crazy meal after we watched our soldiers basically are like starving to death right now. And these people are negotiating the war between Germany and France. And then you do have a little bit of Nick Nolte in there, too, with the guy that wants to be like, when we get towards the end of the film and they actually do negotiate the ceasefire. The ceasefire's at 11, so let's go fucking kill some people. Because I love war, even though you haven't seen me doing anything. And I think he says something too about like also not really being in a war.
Yeah, he was born at the wrong time, that the rest of his family had been in major wars, but he wasn't there. Yeah, there was a few moments like that that had some similarities. The Thin Red Line.
I mean, it is gory, like Black Hawk Down was gory.
Yeah.
Black Hawk Down might have been a hair more gory.
Black Hawk Down didn't have a guy just getting crushed under the treads of a tank.
I know.
That was pretty good.
They had a real tank. I watched some
people getting burned alive. That was also some good stuff.
That's about the only CG in this entire thing is the fire. Whatever. They had flamethrowers. They were having a good time. If you were made a war movie today, Charles, would you do something differently? Would you try to be more traditional? Are you going to change the theme? Are you going to be like, actually, war is pretty good?
Yeah. Actually, war's fun sometimes.
Yeah, you might have a blast at war. Consider
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, yeah. Do you ever think about the good things that happen in war? There's not too many different ways to do a war movie, I feel like now. We kind of have had every version of war movies. Most of them are that war is bad. Occasionally, like we said before, you get kind of in the 70s. 70s was when you had war movies. I feel like that has slowly died down. That was when you had, like I brought up stuff like The Dirty Dozen or Kelly's Heroes or something where it was very much, hey, sometimes we can have some fun in war and make some jokes and just forget that people are dying on a mass scale. Like we can just have some fun. That was like the end of that. People eventually were like, I don't think we should be making jokes about World War II. And it was like, yeah, you know what? Maybe you're right. Maybe we shouldn't be. Maybe we shouldn't be making.
Or like Inglorious Bastards has a lot of comedy in it.
It still does have a lot of comedy in it, yeah. But I feel like that movie almost, you could say, earns the comedy by it goes so far in the direction of being like, oh no, war still is very, very terrible. Like, there's still people getting murdered left and right and all the crazy stuff happening. But we can make some jokes. We're not going to pretend that war is fun just because these guys are having some fun sometimes. But like you made the comparison, the most recent other World War One film was 1917, and I think I preferred 1917 to this still. I will say, I really like the book. It's one of my favorite books. Did you ever read it?
No.
Is it one you ever read? It's good. This movie's not very much like the book, so I didn't like this movie that much. I thought it was a well-made, competently made movie, but it changes a lot of stuff from the book that I didn't like.
Did you watch the other ones? There's more all
I
quiet on
know.
the
I
West.
I still never watched the original one. I've had it for a while, and I still have never gotten around to watching that. Which I've heard that one's closer to the book, I think.
Well, it's a German book, and I think they said the other adaptations didn't even like follow the Germans for being a German book.
I don't know. Well, I know. Yeah, I know the other version's American. I think the one's American, and I think they made one in the '80s that was British. I think the first one's American, the second one's British, and then this one's a German one. Which that's almost the weirdest thing that I've heard people say that the other versions are better than this, even though this is the German version. I do feel like it did feel like a lot of this movie, nothing against the Germans, but it felt very much like this movie was those damn French and making their demands. I'm like, you kind of invaded their country, and they're like, but they were being dicks about it to us. Like, they really didn't have to be that way. And I'm like, again, you invaded their country. Like, it did very much seem to want to paint the French as being assholes. And I'm like, I don't think that was a weird way that a lot of that came off.
I think that was the point. I don't think that was the message of the movie. I think it was very much these are what these people believe at that time. Because even when they show our actual protagonists and they're like, we're going to even invade Paris. And he's like so pumped about invading Paris as he loses his friends and sees what's happening to complete strangers. I don't know if he's a little Nazi anymore. I don't know if he's a part of the Iron Youth anymore.
Hey, the Nazis weren't there. Those were National Democrats.
Yeah, those were like pre-Nazis.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's probably what they're trying to get at when they're saying like the French had bad terms, because that's what like historians say that's what led to Hitler rising, was because Germany was like so impoverished after the war for so many years that someone like him came along and everyone was like, well, I'll go along with this guy if he says he's going to make our country. I mean, if you want to make those parallels, there was a guy that came along and said he was going to make that country great again, and they were like, sign me up.
Yeah.
So, there's some connections there.
And they weren't the good guys.
Yeah, spoiler alert. I think this movie would have benefited from something from Thin Red Line. It needed like a voiceover, because the book is all from the first person of Paul Baumer. It's all his voice. And through most of this movie, everything felt a little too surface level. It's just his reactions to everything, but you never hear in his mind. It seems to go back and forth on, does he still believe this? Or like, he obviously wants to go home. He doesn't want to be in the war anymore. But you'll get scenes where he seems really frightened and doesn't want to be here, to then he's like, yeah, sure, I'll just kill all these guys. And he just like goes back and forth, and you're like, does he not agree with it anymore? Does he want to go back? Sometimes he charges straight into battle like it's nothing at all, and he doesn't mind it. So it would have benefited, I think, from having a little bit of his narration to kind of hear what his thoughts are going into this. Like I said, we just get a lot of his reaction to things happening around him, but you don't know what he's really what's
Yeah,
really
that's
happening
actually a
with
good
him.
point. We brought up the fact that Malik has nonstop voiceovers to a movie that has zero voiceovers. Yeah, I guess in the sense you are just maybe he's not thinking when he's going back out to battle. I mean, he's definitely gets little slices of like happiness here and there. You know, when they're eating boiled goose, they find a little bit of happiness there in that situation. But Italy is like another mostly experience film. The little bit of dialogue that you actually need is probably like the negotiations between Daniel Brohl. He's probably the
Yeah.
only person that you
I think that's
recognize as.
completely useless too. I hate those scenes. I feel like they take you so out of it. And they really serve no purpose because they're it's not even a negotiation. They literally just walk in and the French keep going, these are our terms. You either sign them or we'll just keep having war. So it's not even like a good negotiation scene. You get that little bit when he argues with the guy that's obviously more of a military guy than he's more of a politician, and that guy's like, "Oh, these terms are terrible," and he's like, "Oh, what do you just want us to have more people dying every day?"
So
So you
you
only get
think
that.
I can agree with you there. You could cut out almost all those scenes. I would have a little bit of these people that are like living a good life, but maybe it could just be that general is just
Well,
chilling in a
he
nice, comfortable room with his bloodhound.
that's one of the changes from the book that I don't think is for the better. Is he replaces in the book? There's parts where Paul goes back home, like similarly in Thin Red Line, like it's the parts where he has like downtime and he actually gets sent back home from the front line, and that's where you kind of get that he sees all those people from his home, and they're the people that are eating real well, and they haven't been touched by the war, and they ask him all the questions like, "Oh, isn't the war going so great out there? Like you're probably doing all sorts of great stuff for this country." Like they're so detached from the war that they have no clue what's going
I
on.
mean, he goes back because it would be a crime. He can't go AWOL.
No, they just sent him on leave.
No. I
What are you
meant
talking about?
he has to go back into the war, so he's
Oh, he's
disgusted
injured at
by
one
it.
point in the book. Yeah, he's like he does try to like get out of the war. He hopes he could go home with his injury, but they're like, "Nope, you're still healthy enough to go back."
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that everything is terrible, but I mean, it's not a very long movie in
It's as long as the
comparison to
rest of
the
them were.
yeah, compared to I think most war movies are so fucking long. You don't usually get a short war movie. I guess unless it's today, because I don't think 1917 is a very long movie either.
It's not. No,
Paths of Glory is
it's
probably like
shorter
90
this. Yeah.
minutes. It gets trimmed down a little bit. We do get the breaks in the action too, but maybe, yeah, you're right. It's just a choice. You know, he starts learning about the older guy that he's in war with as they're shitting together. Yeah, when they go to steal that goose, we get that type of downtime, but it is mostly like, yeah, in the trenches, in the battle. I think that, yeah, you are getting kind of like creative kills or things that you haven't seen in a while, but it doesn't go fully into some of the things that it could have. Like, it doesn't go into the fact that a lot of people are getting sick from being in those trenches. From basically, wasn't joking earlier when I was talking about the feces. They literally got sick because they had nowhere to go. Not just no food, but they were like down with sick people and shit
They
like
were
that.
down with the sickness.
They were down with the sickness. So like at the end of this movie, when they say like almost 17 million people died, a huge chunk of that was illness. It wasn't even getting shot or run over by a tank or flamethrowed. It was not that. Yeah, it wasn't all the good stuff, I guess, if you want to call it the good stuff. In retrospect, I think that it has what I maybe like and wanted to revisit it because I watched it whenever it was an Oscar nominee 2 years ago for 2022. So literally just last year's Oscars. And I don't even remember if it won. I think it did win some things.
I definitely won Best Foreign. I had looked it up earlier too. It won like more technical things. Like I think it won editing, and it might have won cinematography, maybe.
Yeah.
Cinematography or set design or something. It won mostly like technical awards, I think, for most of them.
And I think that's kind of where this movie.
And it did win original score, which I'll say I was also not a fan of that. That was a little too Hans Zimmerish for my tastes as well. There was that.
Well, you mean it was too Hans Zimmer? It didn't even sound like the other Hans Zimmer scores.
You didn't get the.
I mean, yeah, I guess maybe if you want to say like Hans does love the synthesizer, I guess,
Yeah.
but I did like the piano, the organ, the synthesizer. I like the minimalism to it. He doesn't really.
As I was like, a
I mean
lot of
that.
it doesn't even. It almost took me some time to think of where there was music, and I feel like the only parts that I distinctly remembered the music from were those parts where it was like too much. Like it probably did fit into the background, but there were some parts where I thought it was too much in the front, and I was like, nah, I don't like this.
No. I thought it was cool. Does it work? I mean, you kind of get that sound early on too. It doesn't happen a lot, but it does seem a little sporadic to when it's happening. Like it happens early on when we're following the jacket around, or it does a good job of like building tension. So I guess I'm a little different in that aspect. It's not like, oh, it sounds cool, because if you listen to this soundtrack, you're gonna get your what you would call your Hans Zimmer Inception bombs sporadically. That is not like a fun track to listen to. I feel like it was maybe a little too minimalistic as opposed to like something like It Follows. I feel like if you're just gonna have like a one-man band, you might as well let them go. You might as well let them go a little crazy. Does the synth bother you for being in a World War II movie or anything that took place before the 80s?
There was something weird about it that I didn't. Again, I since we've compared it a few times, like I don't mind as much if you're gonna have like that kind of like weird. I don't even want to say anachronistic because it's not even that so much. But if you're gonna put music that's not period appropriate, at least be having fun with it, like Tarantino. Like that's people's criticism is that his Western and World War II movies have anachronistic music elements in them, but it's at least again for the purpose of he just looks at it and goes, yeah, but it would sound fucking cool if this was playing in the background in 1882 or something like that. I don't give a fuck if it doesn't fit.
Yeah, I want some hip hop. I want some Jack White. Like, give me something.
Yeah, I'll throw that in there. So it's like, yeah, I don't know. It doesn't bother me as much when you're just like having fun with it, but when it's like, I don't know. Yeah, like I said, it made me think of all the things I don't like as much about Hans Zimmer's music when it's too much at certain points, and it's like, maybe pull it back just a little bit there.
I mean, I will say I think that Hans Zimmer from Inception on kind of has that bad. That's the only type of music he makes. But when you watch the scores or listen to the scores from The Thin Red Line and Black Hawk Down, they're so different. They're very different from each other.
It really is like something happened on Inception that he found a sound that he seems to be like, oh, people want more of this, and he just keeps doing it over and over again for every movie now, which I don't know what it is. I think every composer.
That's why he's getting hired now.
Yeah, every composer I think has their trademark sounds that you can usually tell it's their type of music. Like John Williams is really good at themes, and other people, I think Jerry Goldsmith is good with like percussion in his scores. But I don't know why Hans Zimmer is just like, just make a big womp noise for no reason whatsoever, and just put that in every score I do now. And I'm gonna play the electric guitar over my scores now. I'm just gonna be that guy. Now he goes on world tours just playing the electric guitar for his music.
Go on his IMDb and look at the stuff that he does, because when he's not a composer, he's like, played the keyboards on this, played the bongo drums on this. We're like, what the fuck is that? What? Somebody like hired you to play the keyboard. I mean, unless you're like a huge music aficionado, are going to even realize like, oh wait, was that? Yeah, that's Hans Zimmer. I can tell. Would you hire Hans Zimmer under the contract that he can't make his bombs?
Yeah. Say, I only want pre-Inception Hans Zimmer on this one.
What scores, not necessarily military or war movies, who do you seem to be digging the most? Or is it pretty random? Like sometimes they get a good score and sometimes they don't.
It's sometimes pretty random.
Composers,
I think Michael Giacchino's still, I think a lot of his stuff's good when he probably does the best for any Marvel movies. It's almost like if he's not doing the Marvel movie, it's not good. Or Ludwig Göransson. He's probably the other one.
Yeah, what about when Giacchino did the Batman and he did his bombs?
Yeah, that was his connection. He was trying to connect it back to the Dark Knight.
He literally seems like a person that's all over the place. He can make very good scores. They don't necessarily always sound like the same person. I liked Johan Johansson, who died a few years ago and was Villeneuve's guy before he picked up Hans Zimmer. I thought he had some good scores.
Yeah.
Like Rival, I thought that was a really good score.
That is a good one. It's the same with all the Marvel movies where with everything, the cinematography, everything keeps getting more and more homogenized and everything just feels the same. Because you can't even, half the time you'll listen to one of those scores and you probably couldn't tell that it specifically went with one movie versus another. Like you'd really have to be told, oh, that was the score in Black Widow versus that was the score in Iron Man 3. I mean, except for the AC/DC. Once you hear that, you're like, nah, I know that was Iron Man.
Then you're running in the soundtrack, so
yeah,
that's a cheat. Yeah, I think you are right about that. What they do, Star Wars does it too. A lot of big franchises do it. They got their themes that keep coming back up. So there's like an Avengers theme. You hear that same music in every fucking movie that there is. You know, sometimes it changes up, but yeah, you could be like, play the Avengers theme and be like, what Marvel movie is this from? And it's not from any of the Avengers, or none of the Avengers are in this movie.
Yeah, it was a random scene from Black Panther where Steve Rogers showed up on screen, so we decided to play the Avengers theme.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, at least I'll give him credit. I guess it's not a score that I like, but I think it's probably memorable. Like I would remember, like, oh yeah, that movie had that like weird. It did all that in this film, All Quiet on the Western Front, but.
We will get to see the guy that played Paul in this again. I don't know how big his role is, but I saw that he's in Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein. Will he have a bigger role, like speak? I don't know. He probably has like a pitchfork, and that's it. He's like, I'm the dude with the pitchfork. We're going to kill this monster. He's Igor. Yeah, he's totally unrecognizable.
Yeah, pretty much everyone in this movie is all like unknowns other than Daniel Bruhl. He's like the only person. I'm sure most of these actors are maybe more well known in Germany for being in stuff over there, but for American audiences, that was pretty much the only character that I think anyone would recognize.
No, I watched the making of thing that was short. The only person that spoke English was the cinematographer, who I'm assuming that's his native language is English. But even Daniel Bruhl in that spoke complete German. Like his questions and everything that he was totally in German. I actually do think, going back to being turned on and turned off, I think that was another turn off. Not wanting to see this movie was the fact that there were already, even though I didn't see them, all these different All Quiet on the Western Front. It made me think of A Star Is Born. I'm like, how many fucking adaptations do we need of this movie? When I saw it, just because I was trying to catch as many Oscar movies as I could before the Oscars, I really fucking dug this movie a lot. I don't think that it's perfect. I think I probably went for it more than anything because you didn't see it before. We could have picked the best of the best or the fucking worst. That would, like you said, that would actually be interesting to do war movies, but they got to be fucking terrible. Let's find the absolute worst war movies that we can find. I think that this is not as good as Thin Red Line at all, but I still think it's interesting. I do think it's worth seeing. I watched, weirdly, right before we recorded this, the director has another movie, Conclave, with Ray Fine, and I just saw that in theaters beforehand. A way different approach. I think your dude's there again, this with the score, but I think it's the same composer. I think it does kind of have its bomb thing too, so it's still sporadic and shit like that, but it's kind of like, what if the Pope was the Jigsaw Killer? Kind of like that. I don't know.
I mean, I'm glad you said that. That wasn't the thought I had from seeing the commercials. Trailers for it, so you made me more interested in seeing it if that's what the movie's like.
The movie breathes a hell of a lot, and it doesn't feel like it's very clever, but then like as you get towards the end, when you start piecing things together in your own head, I think that you start appreciating it a lot better. But yeah, I would compare the Pope that dies in the beginning of the movie to John Kramer. They're like, he's so well thought out, and this isn't Saw 1, this is Saw 4. He's dead and things are still going to plan, but yeah, I don't want you to think that there's any like brutal traps or anything like that. You're like Ray Fine, he wakes up in the middle of the night and he's got he's in some weird contraption from the Pope.
Stanley Tucci's above him.
Stanley Tucci, yeah. Yeah, you do. That movie does have a couple people in it you'll recognize. At least 4 people. So he's getting a little bit more famous there.
The composer, he's also the composer for the Dune TV show. So he really is taking over for Hans Zimmer there. Which I'd say I like Hans Zimmer's score for the Dune movies, but I think maybe it's because his like weird, like over the top stuff fits that, because those are kind of weird over the top movies. I feel like I just don't like when it's in a very serious.
I do like the weird singing and shit that he adds.
Yeah, when it's just in like a movie like this, should be more grounded. It like stands out more. Feels more out of place.
Well, we're all over the place, but let me ask you this. When you watched Inception, did that bother you, or did it bother you that, like, they continued doing that in so many other movies?
I think it was after, yeah. Would have been the first time you've heard that, so it did, yeah. It didn't bother me then, because it's just like, oh, okay. That was an interesting thing to do for this movie. And then, yeah, it's when it's every single movie after that, and you're like, all right, I don't know about this as much. I don't know.
So you would have preferred, like, what if they just went with, like, a full synth score? It was just like
just all
like Legend there. Or something, like
yeah, just full on. Yeah, I mean those aren't bad. Something like Legend or Blade Runner. It's all electronic. You can throw some of that in there.
Or you get like some band like Goblin.
Yeah,
like a Suspiria thing.
Yeah, why don't we have more Italian prog rock bands scoring full films?
Yeah, that'd be kind of cool.
Go the Dawn of the Dead route, which is just use incidental music that's not even like copyright free music that you could find to put in your movie.
And I mean, we're probably a few years away from a movie that's completely AI scored too. That's gonna happen.
We'll get there.
Maybe that's why Johansson's not with us anymore. He saw the future and was like, I can't be a part of this.
Couldn't handle it.
No, I mean, I felt like the cast was good in this. Obviously, and I bring it up every time we do a foreign film, I can't get like the little nuances in what people say because I'm reading the subtitle and I don't want to be rude to the Germans, but that's kind of a rough, as whoever's listening to this podcast listens to my voice. That's a very rough language to listen to. I feel that...
What's the best language to listen to then, other than English, I guess?
Probably French.
I would agree. I would either say French or Italian.
It flows very nicely.
Yeah, better than most.
I don't know about the Italian, though, and I only say that because I have been watching a lot of Giallo, a.k.a. not the greatest of movies, from Italy, and some of those voices are so rough that they do sound like... They're like... I'm like, what in the fuck was that? So I lean French. It's a very nice sounding language. Yeah, I mean, I wasn't going to find a movie that was war is good. But I did think that whenever we were coming up with genres to discuss, that war had a ton of movies in it that we haven't already discussed. There's still tons that we haven't discussed.
Yeah.
And they're all slightly different from each other. I feel like maybe some of the problems of a modern war movie is that they're pulling too many tropes from previous war movies when, like we said when we were joking about like a complete synth score, you got to do something a little bit different in the narrative of your story. And I think that this is maybe like most interesting when, it's following the jacket around, the inanimate object of the jacket. Because what stands out the most in this is like, I think everything looks really good, but we're also in an age where cinematography is top notch. They can fix a lot of stuff in post with the color correction and everything.
You almost have to go out of your way to make it look bad. You almost have to make it look bad on purpose if you don't want it to look good.
Yeah, and this I thought real sets, really in fucking mud and shit like that. I think all they added was old school fog machines. It was just a guy with an old school fog maker. I think some of the stuff was, the more minute technical stuff were actually pretty cool, because when you see all these people dead on the battlefield, there's tons of them that are, they're special effects. They're just dummies. And then sometimes they actually had actors laying there for, whatever reason. They had stunts. They really had everything going off. I mean, I think the only thing that they didn't fucking do was obviously the flamethrowers, unless they did actually have flamethrowers to some degree.
I mean, maybe in the background in some of those shots, I think they just CG'd the flames like on the guys. I think they probably did have some actual flamethrowers.
That looks bad to me, but not enough to like kill me.
Yeah.
What was I watching? It's the same director as Black Hawk Down, but because Gladiator 2 is coming out, I watched Gladiator 1, and I watched it with Steph. I think it's the first time that she saw it all the way through. And she's like, what do you think about all this slow-mo? And I'm like, I don't love it. I think it's a little excessive. And it came out the year before Black Hawk Down, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know what you're doing, Ridley Scott. I mean, you like I said, he won editing for Black Hawk Down, but what in the fuck is he doing with some of these shots? I feel like you slow down to show something that we can't see otherwise. I think when it's dramatically slowed down, that it's just not as interesting. We'll have to see what he does for Gladiator 2.
The whole film's in slow-mo. It's all at half speed.
All digital cameras.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't like the slow-mo, but the shit that doesn't hold up in that movie is the special effects, the CG, like Coliseum and stuff. If it's not the focus, it's fine. But when they're like, oh, wow, look at that massive Coliseum, and they show it, and I'm like, that looks terrible right now. They need to George Lucas that shit. They need to go back in and make it look realistic or something.
That's the thing. Yeah, George Lucas ruined it for everybody else. Like, it was okay to do it, but then he did it too much, and now it's if anyone touches their movie, even a single frame, it's like, oh no, they're ruining it. They ruined it. It's wrong.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like once your movie's out, you got to stick to it.
I mean, we do have like 6 versions of Blade Runner.
Ridley Scott is the
That's
absolute
his
worst
most
offender.
film.
I mean, I watched Gladiator, the extended cut. So it's like, in some of his movies are...
Every single movies he has extended cuts, at least the ones that have come out in the past, maybe Alien onwards, because I know there's an extended cut for Alien. There's extended cuts for this. American Gangster has an extended cut. They all do.
Yeah, he said Gladiator 2 is his cut too. So maybe now he's just not even worried about trying to go back and do different cuts.
40 years into his career that they were like, all right, we'll just let you do whatever you want.
What's his one with Orlando Bloom?
Kingdom of Heaven. Yeah, that movie has a few different cuts.
Yeah, there's like an extended cut. That's the only cut I watched. I think it's a great movie. Yeah. And people were like, yeah, but if you saw the theatrical cut, you would not be into that movie at all. Like, that movie is so butchered, the one that came out in theaters.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because the extended cut's like, I think closer to like 3 hours long, and I think the theatrical cut's like maybe less than 2 hours. Like, there's a ton of stuff that's different.
Yeah, I don't understand why they do that shit. Yeah, just leave it how it is. Who gives a fuck?
Yeah.
Just don't take it away from us. If you're going to release it on home video, whatever that is in the future, give us all the cuts. Give us all the fucking versions.
Like I said, just do Blade Runner. Blade Runner's got like 6 discs. It's got, the regular cut, the director's cut, the work print cut.
That Blu-ray I have is like all 5 cuts.
So like the European cut, then it has the final cut.
Then I have Apocalypse Now.
Yeah.
The Redux, and then the final cut.
Yeah.
I do think the final cut's the best version. And I still haven't watched, because we're all just jumping around talking about cuts now, and not all quiet on the Western Front. But there's war movies to a degree.
Yeah.
I would say that I still want to watch The Godfather 3, his new cut of that.
Yeah, I still haven't watched that.
The Coda. I'll see if that makes it any better. So we're a few episodes into season 4. We finished up our war genre. Next month, we're moving into sports. I believe that was Chuck's theme.
Yeah. I mean, you certainly wouldn't have picked it.
I would have probably picked sports. I mean, I don't even remember what I picked. Did I pick war?
No, I think, I don't remember that.
It might have been Lexi.
I know I picked sports, but I don't remember who picked war.
Obviously, Lexi hasn't been on the podcast this entire year, but whenever we were coming up with our genres, we had all picked 4 genres to do. So I think war was probably one of hers. I picked the most generic one. I was like, comedy. And then that was probably the hardest thing to pick. I picked the genre, and I had no idea where I was going to go with it, because there were so many fucking movies to go from, to choose from, not go from. I kind of like how this year's gone so far with our discussions. I think that we actually covered a lot of really good movies. Maybe next year, I know I'm like teasing this endlessly, but you only have another month till we get into it. But next year, we're going to start doing something a little bit different. Maybe we'll cover some bad movies. I don't know.
Always the chance.
Obviously, this is your least favorite of the war movies. How do you feel about this movie overall?
I mean, I don't think it's a bad movie.
It's just like a decent.
Yeah, like I said, I feel like it is one of those movies. If you really like the book, you're not going to like this movie. It also changes the ending. That is where I'll say is kind of another criticism of it. Of it changes enough that it feels like they're just using the name because they know that's a name that people have heard of. Because the whole point of the end is that the war is supposed to be ending. It's supposed to be over, and then he dies in like the most undescriptive. He dies somewhere out in the middle of nowhere. He was marching somewhere and he died, and that the report on the general's desk was like, oh, it was all quiet on the Western Front today, like nothing happened. Like the final things, like he died with a smile on his face because he was finally happy to be free from the war. And this movie, it doesn't give you that. It feels like he was more interested in, he wanted everything to be like a big circle and be just like kind of how he said, like the oh, war is just never ending, because the where he dies is an exact, like kind of not exactly shot for shot, but very similar beat for beat the opening with that other guy, and that he dies, and then it picks up with another young soldier that
Yeah, he dies in like the exact same way, pretty much.
yeah, and there's like another young soldier that does the same thing that he did earlier in the movie when the guy's like, oh, are you injured? No. And start collecting their dog tag, their clips. Like you have to go collect those, which is what he did as like his first thing in the movie. So yeah, the ending's also different. So I don't hate this movie. I don't think it's a bad movie. I just think it's different enough that I genuinely think they might have just used the name because they knew they could sell this movie to a wider audience. Because like you were saying, like with A Star Is Born, it's been made like 5 different times. Let's just slap that name on it and we can sell it again.
I mean, you brought up a lot of good points. I never read the book. I know the book was assigned a few times throughout school, but never in any class I had. It was fucking Romeo and Juliet. Sorry, I bring it up all the time. That was done to death, and there'd be like one class that was like read All Quiet on the Western Front. So I'm not opposed to reading it, but I actually more so want to read it now and check out the other versions, because I feel that I might like this movie more because my brain's not tainted by whatever happened in the story at all. And I'm all for liking a movie less to see where it's come from. Because yeah, this movie, when we get to the ending, which they foreshadow his death with the bullet hole in his jacket, the war is going to end in, I can't remember what they say when they move in, like,
It's like
15 minutes. They showed the French where they're all like celebrating and being extremely racist, having the French drinking wine. Yeah, this battle starts and he ends up in the trenches. He's fighting one guy. He's drowning in mud. He barely survives. He gets the best of the guy with a rock. The fight continues into a bunker and he's just stabbed with a bayonet from some random dude in the darkness. Does have almost the ending that, did you see the big red one? The big red one, yeah.
Yeah.
He's dying, and then the alarm, well, I don't know if the alarm, I guess it was an alarm. They're all announced, it's 11 o'clock, the war's done. He's technically still alive. I don't even say it's happiness or peace. I mean, to an extent, as he's walking up the stairs, I would have done some weird Malik shit. I would have had him walk up into the light and been like in heaven or something. I'd have been like, fuck it, we're showing heaven. He's going straight to heaven. Yeah, they get into the other kid that you see a couple minutes before. I think when you see that kid for the first time, because they keep showing a lot of shots of him, I think he's the only one with red hair, very young. You're almost expecting that this person ends up dying, like he's going to be killed immediately. But you're right, he's the next person in the cycle of war. And we know how everything goes. They're impoverished, like you said, after the war. Immediately get into a Second World War. Maybe this movie came out because they were really like, hey, America, this is for you. You guys got to start paying attention to the politicians that you're making over there, because it's getting a little scary. Like you said earlier, Chuck, we're becoming reminiscent of World War II, or World War I, we'll say, leading into World War II. That's what our country feels like right now. It's not even like a world domination thing as much as it is. It's dumb Hitler.
You could handle smart Hitler, but if it's going to be dumb Hitler, it's just not even worth it.
I mean, I'm sure Hitler wasn't... What did they say about him? He's supposed to be a very good speaker or something, right? Like, that was what he was so good at, was his speeches. On our side, I listened to our soon-to-be president, and he doesn't sound intelligent at all, but he does have a lot of people that are like, hell yeah, that's what we're here for. Yeah, we're going to lighten things up. Not really.
Was they
With
not
our
really? That we did not pick very happy sports movies either, I don't think.
No, happiness wasn't on our minds ever.
Really wasn't.
No, we'll be getting into that. We'll do our Christmas movie curated by Charles. He picked the movie. We'll reveal that later.
Yeah.
And we're going to have a little bit of fun. Things are going to change up. They'll be like, Justin, you're hitting the hell out of this and not really saying anything about it. I don't know. I'm just trying to keep it, reveal it at the right time. I don't want to reveal it before we do one more genre.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it. Would I have picked sports like you said? Maybe. I liked your sports documentaries.
Yeah, those are some good ones.
I'm open-minded. Hopefully everybody else is too. Yeah, your movie, your favorite war movie, one of your favorite war movies, Black Hawk Down. It summed it up. It summed up war in the beginning with a quote. They probably didn't even have to do the rest of the movie. It just could have just been the quote on the screen.
For the full 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
It's just that quote on the screen.
Yeah. I mean, at least you had some people in Thin Red Line that were like fucking insane. That they were like, yeah. Or, you had it in Apocalypse Now also, where they're just like, I like killing people and I'm a psychopath. And yeah, maybe you are. Maybe more of that. Favorite scene in this movie, Chuck? Go.
It's definitely the tank running that guy over. That was cool. The tanks in general, I did like the tanks coming out. That whole scene was great. Of them, they think they took that trench, and they're all happy. They're like, we definitely got this. We're fine. And then just immediately you just hear like the rumbling of the tanks, and they look over the top of the trench and just see all those tanks rolling right up to them. That whole scene is pretty good.
And have no idea how to fight tanks.
Yeah,
shoot at them.
They're just straight up shooting with rifles at a full tank and just being like, yeah, sure, that'll take it down.
Use your grenades. Your grenades.
Before they figure something out.
I enjoyed the scene at the end where he was in the trench with that French guy. The French guy was like too loud. The French were already invading where the area that he was at, and he was watching people getting fucking murdered. Tried to shut the guy up by like shoving mud in his mouth. Stabbing him a bunch. As he's trying to hide, the guy's gurgling to death. The most horrific death. Just watching this guy like look him in the face and gurgle and choke. Has a conscience way after the fact where he's trying to comfort this guy by pressing on his stab wounds. Our main character's young. He didn't have the best training at combat. He didn't have the best training at anything medical either. So
I don't think he had any training.
They did have basic training that they kind of like gloss over, but yeah, they don't go into Full Metal Jacket showing like the training. It's just like, you know how to do this stuff. You put on your gas mask. It's maybe not real comedy, but I do like the conversation that they have in their gas masks where their face is getting sucked in. Not that anyone ever comments on anything, but I'd be interested to know what the hell everyone else thought about this movie. I did get a comment from somebody on Facebook about the Thin Red Line. They were asking about what we thought thematically the end of that movie meant with the helmet on the beach, which I thought it was a coconut on the beach with a palm tree growing out of it, which I answered for us, Chuck. I said, we just think that nature's going to take over. There's beauty out there when humans aren't around. We'll see you in a few weeks, probably 2 weeks.
Yeah.
All right. Bye.
We are Cinema d'Amore. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter to stay up to date with news and information on upcoming episodes. Find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Podbean, Spotify, Amazon Music, Audible, Pandora, Alexa, or iHeartRadio. It would be greatly appreciated if you subscribe to our podcast on your platform of choice. We also appreciate feedback, so rate us, review us, and let us know what you think. And above all else, thank you for listening.
I'm a train guy now.